Chapter 15, Understanding the Influence of Class on Black Students' Educational Outcomes, presented by Ivy Jenkins. The purpose of Chapter 15 is to explore how the intersectionality of race and class influences Black collegians' experiences and educational outcomes. The plight of poor and low-income minorities. There is much research in the field, which includes education, sociology, and health, but there's barely any research out there that covers middle class and upper income Blacks in the United States as it relates to higher education. Intersectionality and interchangeability. There is no scholarship documenting collegiate experiences or academic outcomes of non-low-income Blacks, meaning the upper middle class and the middle class. Interchangeability of race and class related to the conditions of Blacks in the United States is non-existent also. Unfortunately, the numbers of Blacks below the poverty line is disproportionate to all other races. The poverty line comparisons. In 2011, the poverty data for the U.S. compiled by the Census Bureau identified 28% of Black individuals were living below the poverty line, as opposed to 10% of white individuals who were living below the poverty line. Statistics and literature on low-income Blacks contributed to the term low-income becoming synonymous with being Black. Black families are overrepresented among low-income families in the United States. The 2011 census information reported that 45% of Black families were middle-income families or higher. Those were the segments that were underrepresented. The Black middle class and upper middle class families exist and are growing in numbers annually. Now we'll speak on the socioeconomic impacts. Benefits of higher socioeconomic status do not eliminate some of the negative impacts of race for Black students. For example, an increase in median family income resulted in higher test scores for white students, but the Black children did not have increased test scores. Black students from higher income families with educated parents perform better in school than Black students without these advantages, but it's still less than their white counterparts. Now, the experiences of Black middle class and upper class students in education are as follows. They experience discrimination, but it's slightly different. That discrimination includes withdrawal, resigned acceptance, verbal responses, and physical counterattacks. But the lack of protection of recognized middle and upper class status is prevalent for the upper and middle class Blacks. And they also encounter barriers in white dominated environments. Now, when we look at the theoretical framework that's included in this study, one of them is cross-Negrocene theory expanded. The Negrocene is defined as the process of becoming Black, and it's broken down into three categories of racial attitudes, which include pre-encounter, immersion and immersion, and internalization. Now, the pre-encounter attitudes are even further broken down into three types of racial attitudes, which include assimilation, which includes, pro-Black, pro-American attitudes, miseducation, which relates to negative collective stereotypes about Blacks, and self-hatred, which involves self-loathing on the basis of race. Immersion and immersion relates to racial identity attitudes that involve anti-white or pro-black attitudes. Immersion relates to attitudes that exhibit a strong disdain for white people. And immersion relates to attitudes that show an uncritical romanticization of anything related to black people and culture. The next one is internalization, which deals with accepting and embracing blackness. And in addition to that, it includes a more understanding approach to other cultures, revealed through four identity types, which include Afrocentric, bicultural, multiculturalist racial, and multiculturalist inclusive. These stages focus on a more positive, internalized, and accepting stance when it comes to blackness and being black. A second theoretical framework that was used in the study is the Aves, Jones, and McEwen model of dimensions of identity. Now, as you can see, in the middle here of this atom, there is the core. And around it, you can see the intersectionality of sexual orientation, culture, class, religion, gender, and race, all of which make up the core, which includes personal attributes and personal characteristics and personal identity of the individual. Now, this study, the method for this study and the sample. The method, which was an educational longitudinal study, which utilized data from the U.S. Department of Education, National Center on Educational Statistics, which initiated in spring of 2002. The sample included full-time black students, a total of 1,402 students, 50.6% of which were male and 49.4% were female, all of which who attended four-year public and private nonprofit post-secondary institutions of learning. All the participants were 21 years of age on average, and the mean high school GPA for all the participants ranged between 2.01 and 2.50. 68% of the participants were first generation college students, meaning that their mother or father had not obtained a bachelor's degree or hadn't gone any further than a bachelor's degree. The study limitations include many different variables that were not available in the data set, which included institutional selectivity, SAT and ACT scores of the students, the status of grant and loan acceptance of the students, and whether or not the students had declared a designated major. Now, the study results included significant differences between high socioeconomic status students and other socioeconomic status groups. 39.4% low SES socioeconomic status students expected to earn at least a bachelor's or less, compared to 8.5% of high socioeconomic status students who expected to earn a bachelor's or less. In addition, the difference between the high socioeconomic status students' educational expectations and the less affluent socioeconomic status students is significant. Well, it was significant. It wasn't the same for low, middle, and high middle socioeconomic status students. Implications of the study were that empirical support for distinguishing Black students from one another beyond low income status. and usefulness of results related to student population previously not targeted by college educators and services has an impact or needs to be researched. And furthermore, intersecting identities should be recognized by higher education workers. And lastly, findings are significant for institutional, state, and federal policymakers in higher education to be able to service and assist this underrepresented segment of students, which include the high and upper middle and upper class students. And in conclusion, the black middle class and upper class struggles are often overlooked, and there are higher expectations for middle class and upper class students, which can pose greater challenges related to academic achievement and positive educational outcomes than for other students, meaning the low and low middle class. And the needs of middle class and upper class black students mostly are ignored by policymakers today. Their struggle is real and is not being addressed at this current time. I thank you for listening. If you have any questions, I'll address them in class.